Seth Jones will be out of the Winter Olympics for Team USA, but what does that mean for his possible return to the Florida Panthers lineup?
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, January 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Jacob Winans joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday. You can follow him on X at JakeW_8. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. Today, we are going to discuss the status of Seth Jones and Niko Mikkola in segment number 1, where Seth Jones is going to be out of the Winter Olympics for Team USA. We're also going to discuss Brad Marchand's possible return on this road trip in segment number 2. And what energy that brings for the Florida Panthers lineup when he does come back. And then we are going to preview Thursday night's game between the Florida Panthers and the Winnipeg Jets. But Jacob, welcome back to the show. But horrible news that we heard on Wednesday morning about Seth Jones, the fact that he will not be playing in the Winter Olympics for Team USA. And he has been replaced by Jackson Lacombe of the Anaheim Ducks. And also goes to show how going to the World Championships matter for a guy like Jackson Lacombe as opposed to someone like Lane Hudson there for Team USA. But, man, is this a bummer for Seth Jones, who we didn't think that when he took the puck off the collarbone area in the Winter Classic that this was going to be a long injury at all. But here we are. And then this announcement for Seth Jones. And it sucks because this might be his only chance to play in the Olympics at all in his career, based on where he is for his career.
Yeah, it's a tough break. When he got hit with the puck in the Winter Classic, no one was thinking it'd be this kind of a long-term injury. And it can only lead me to believe that he's got a broken collarbone, and that's just something that that requires time, even if it is a small fracture in the collarbone as a defenseman. The type of hits you take back there along the boards and the way he would have to protect himself, it's not worth putting the player in danger. So that's what they're up against. And it's just on a personal level for him, that's a devastating thing to have happen. He's 31 years old. It's unlikely that he ends up back at the Olympics again 4 years from now. It was likely his one and only shot, and it was a guy who we thought was a long shot to even make the team, and proved everybody wrong. Had a great postseason last year, was off to a great start this year, taking on a ton of responsibility with a really beat up and injured Panthers team. Really earned his way onto that roster the hard way, and for him to not get the opportunity is definitely unfortunate. Jackson Lacombe, I thought was probably the logical next man up. I thought he was definitely a better fit for it than Lane Hudson, given the role that Seth Jones was going to be playing. You want to get a guy similar to what he does, and hopefully similar in physicality and size as well, which Lane Hudson is not. No disrespect to Lane Hudson. He's a great player, just plays a different style of game. So I think Jackson Lacombe is a good replacement. Team USA will still be good. They're still going to be in medal contention. So from that standpoint, they should be able to absorb the loss of Seth Jones. But for Seth Jones personally, and just the ramifications on the Panthers team, this is another injury blow that the Panthers just really can't afford to have.
Yeah, and Jackson Lacombe has a 4 inches of an advantage over Lane Hudson, and probably like 40 pounds of an advantage there to take those hits that you're going to take as a defenseman in a best on best, as we have been begging for over a decade now. Now we're getting one step closer to that as the games are just a few weeks away. But for Seth Jones and his eligibility to return to the lineup, which the first day that he'll be eligible to return will be on January 27th against the Utah Mammoth at home. But even then, now when you look at this and the fact that he was out even a week before he's eligible to even return to the Panthers lineup, this tells me that he's likely not going to return in the first place for the Panthers when they do get to that date, because when we talk about collarbones and how sensitive they are for the recovery, that's a 4 to 6 week injury. And when we get to that point, it's going to just be over the 3 week mark for Seth Jones when he is eligible. So I don't think that for the Panthers here that it's going to be just right for that date that he's going to come back. So that's the worry for me. But thankfully for the Panthers here, although Niko Mikkola did not practice today for the Panthers, Paul Maurice did say that he is fine and that he is going to be able to play on Thursday night in Winnipeg. So that is a little bit of a relief for the Panthers based on their decor, because you're thinking Jeff Petrie might have had to move up a line to play with Uvis Balinskis, and those two were already playing the third pair to start the season, and then you're going to have a third pair of Sebrango and Bjornfoot. That would put a lot of pressure on Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad to play and shortening the bench for sure. So that's at least one bit of news. But for Seth Jones, I doubt we see him even in the very last game before the Olympic break when the Panthers visit the Lightning, which will be on the second end of a back-to-back. And there's a lot of big games for the Panthers. By the time we get to the Olympic break, it'll be 17 games missed for Seth Jones. He's already at 8.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing him before the Olympic break, because for the simple fact that if he was healthy enough to come back prior to the break, he'd be healthy enough to play in the Olympics. It seems unlikely we're going to see him anytime soon. We're looking at a return way longer and later than we expected. And we kind of talked about this injury when it first happened. If it was short term, if it was 10 games or less, that's something the Panthers can probably survive. That's an injury where it's not ideal, but if you can go 500 in the games he misses, you'll be okay. When we get to the 15, 17 game range, that's when you're running into some serious trouble. And I just don't know at this stage if the Panthers have the horses to stay in this race with Seth Jones now on the shelf. Matthew Tkachuk being back helps a lot offensively. I still think that power play is going to struggle now because it's missing its quarterback. Tkachuk coming back should help, but it's almost like a one step forward, one step back at the same time. I don't think you really gain a whole lot when you lose your power play quarterback. Uvis Balinskis has filled in admirably these last handful of games. Asking him to do that and play at this pace for 17 games, that's asking a lot.
Yeah.
And just the pressure this puts on Forsling, on Ekblad, and now Mikkola, who is playing injured. That's no secret. He's not finished a couple of games recently. He's playing through some stuff, and he's not going to get any rest over the Olympic break. He'll be going for Team Finland. So Panthers are really up against it. It's getting to a point now where even with Tkachuk back, it feels like they may just have taken this boat is taking on too much water. There's too many holes in the boat right now, and I don't know how much longer it can stay afloat.
And we were just texting throughout the Leafs Red Wings game right before that game went final, and the TNT broadcast brought up a stat since December 23rd, the top 5 records in the entire NHL, and all 5 teams are Atlantic Division teams, and all of the teams there happen to be either in a wild card spot or 1 point out. So the fact is that all these teams have played over 700 hockey, and then you even mentioned it with Seth Jones, how if the Panthers have to play 500 hockey without Seth Jones, they can survive. But even playing around, along the lines of 650 might not do the job for the Panthers. So we have to discuss the best and worst case scenario for the Panthers here, regardless, here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And I hate to come here with a little bit of pessimism here for possibly the timeline for Seth Jones, but all I got to say is don't expect them to be back on January 27th there. So hopefully the Panthers can find a way to hold the fort, because the schedule is not an easy one for the Cats here going forward. But hey, with that full 3 weeks of rest, maybe we can see them in that first game back on January 26th against the Toronto Maple Leafs as they start a back-to-back right when they come back against 2 Atlantic Division opponents. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss Brad Marchand being back in practice for the Florida Panthers and in a top 6 sweater. How impactful will that be for the Florida Panthers? We'll discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for the show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experiences, not just some resume buzzwords. Sponsored jobs boost your posts to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than a non-sponsored job. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now to support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Segment 2 here on this Wednesday, January 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out our Everydayer Club. It's an ad-free audio feed for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every major podcast app. It's an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for the listeners of this show, and tap the links in the show notes to learn more. So right before the Florida Panthers left for Winnipeg on Wednesday afternoon, Sam Reinhart also did not practice, but just like Niko Mikkola, Paul Maurice did say that Sam Reinhart will be playing on Thursday night. So you mentioned Niko Mikkola has been battling through injuries and not finishing some games. Sam Reinhart has taken the option multiple times this season as the mileage is getting to him, but still good enough to play in games at least. But we know that he's a little bit hobbled, and we're asking a lot for this hockey team as of right now, based on their situation. But Jameson Olive did tweet the lines for the Panthers in practice, and when Brad Marchand, not only did he shed the non-contact sweater, he was back on the line with Eetu Luostarinen and Brad Marchand. I don't know if that's just going to be a placeholder right now for Sam Reinhart, but Paul Maurice did continue to say that he's day-to-day and that he might make a return for the Panthers on this trip. So that's the good news. And that, honestly, it got me excited, a little bit of excitement again. I know we started with some pessimism, Jacob, but there's a little bit of that excitement in me as well when you saw Brad Marchand with those two and how impactful they were in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was the best line in the playoffs. They were the difference makers. So I think you're in a place now if this forward group stays relatively healthy the rest of the way, I think you're in a place where you can afford to put Marchand back with Lundell and Luostarinen because you have Tkachuk back, and that will help to add some balance to the top 6. So I feel like you can pretty confidently run a Bennett, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, and then have Lundell, Marchand, Luostarinen as your 2. And then that third line, that third line just is not going to be what you're used to seeing for a third line for the Panthers over the past couple of years, but it's not too shabby when you have Evan Rodriguez and Mackey on that line. You think you could possibly have AJ Greer on that line. He's produced wherever he's been in the lineup this year. There's still Jesper Boquist who can slide up and down. So it's not terrible. And as terrible in the bottom six right now. If they do decide to go with Lundell, Osterien, and Marchand and sort of load up top heavy in the top six, and then just see if you could create some sort of combination that sparks some depth scoring there in the bottom six. What's really going to decide this for me, and seeing how these lines shake out, at some point we got to see some sort of production from Mackey. He's sort of the key here in the forward group. It almost feels like as Mackey goes, this forward group is going to go, because he's not playing well enough right now where you can put him into the top six and expect production, which means you kind of have to load up your top six with every good forward you've got. If he can find something with Evan Rodriguez on a third line and a third line role where they can generate just some sort of supplemental offense, they might have the firepower offensively, at least, to stay in the race over the next several games when they will likely be struggling defensively. So Mackey is kind of a key here. I'm looking to him to step up a little bit, start producing some offense, and see if we can at least score enough goals to stay afloat.
Yeah, and when I think about the fact that line was together, and it again, there's no guarantee that Brad Marchand will be in the lineup on Thursday against Winnipeg, but how the Panthers managed their situation just a few days ago with putting Jack Studnicka on waivers and then eventually sending him down to Charlotte, there's an open roster spot for the Panthers that they can reactivate Brad Marchand without making an additional move as of right now. It'll get a little bit more difficult when Seth Jones does come back, but that's a topic for a different day. But when you look at how the Panthers and the scoring could possibly be spread out, it not only inserting the best line in the playoffs all of last year from not only the Panthers, but of any team, now there could possibly be a little bit of help for someone like Mackie Samoskevich if Paul Maurice does in fact decide to put Sam Reinhart in that spot on the third line, and then you put AJ Greer back to the fourth line, and then you either scratch Jesper Boquist or Sandis Vilmanis there, and then you give a little bit of that of an opportunity to get a guy like Sam Reinhart to at least help Mackie Samoskevich and get him those better quality of opportunities as well, because he's not a finished product for the Panthers. Kirby Lupal did post a poll the other day about of the Cats and Rats podcast saying, is Mackey a fit in the future? And there's a lot of more than 50% of people said no of that poll, and I can understand why but at the same time I can get why he's not developing at a certain rate, because of the fact that maybe second full season we see the sophomore slumps a lot. We saw that even with Connor Bedard as of last year, but at the same time he's still kind of a spring chicken as well. And if you could put Sam Reinhart on that line, that gives you the defensive presence and at least help on the counterattack as well with Mackey's speed. He doesn't need to be the guy carrying the puck into the zone neither. And that's what Sam Reinhart could possibly bring if Paul Maurice decides to put him on that third line, assuming that Brad Marchand plays.
Yeah, and like you said at the top, it's not a guarantee Marchand plays. The way things have gone, the Panthers have made it clear they're going to be cautious with injuries. They're not rushing guys back, especially a guy who's going to be playing in the Olympics. They're going to do right by these guys and their health and make sure they're in the best position to have the opportunity to play in the Olympics, which they've more than earned. And as fans, we can be frustrated by it. We can want guys back in the lineup as soon as they're physically able to give even 50%. And at the end of the day, these guys have done enough winning and earned it enough to be able to prioritize their health with an opportunity like the Olympics in front of them. So we can scratch that talk right now. Where Mackey is concerned, I think you're exactly right. I think the development has been stunted a little bit this year, but it's more a product of the circumstances than anything else. As far as I'm concerned, he's had to play with so many different line mates and in so many different combinations and in so many different roles that just aren't conducive to developing as an offensive minded playmaking winger. That's just the way things have gone this year. There's a lot less defensive responsibility on him if Barkov is in the lineup, if Sam Bennett is your second center and Anton Lundell is your third center. he's playing on a line with one of those three guys, no matter what, if that's the case. That allows him to focus more on his offense and playmaking ability. That creates better looks for him. That allows him to pass to better finishers. That allows him to focus on forechecking and not have to worry about some of the play behind him where he's the first forward in and then has to get back on defense. A lot of times we overlook the fact that Barkov it's like a great cornerback in football, how they can erase half the field. Barkov often erases the entire neutral zone with his presence. That makes life so much easier on the wingers. And then you take into account the fact that Matthew Tkachuk has been missing the entire year. That harms everybody on the power play. He's so good as a playmaker, especially from below the goal line. Wingers thrive on the power play when Matthew Tkachuk is on it and setting them up. Mackey hasn't had the looks on the power play that really got him going last season when he started to show his potential. It all started with really effective power play minutes. So yeah, he's had a sophomore slump, which is common even in the best of circumstances. This year, and we've talked about this multiple times, people's numbers are going to look different this season. Guys are not going to be at their career pace. It's just the way it's going to be. Same thing goes for a guy like Mackey who's developing. We don't know what his career pace is going to look like because he's just starting. But I don't think this year is a true test of his development. And I think it'd be unfair to categorize it as a failure of a season or as stunted development. He just hasn't been in a situation that's great for developing right now. And I would also say, look at another number 11 in Panthers history. Look at his sophomore season and what he ended up turning into for the Panthers. So it's far too early to push the panic button on Mackey's development.
Yeah, and I looked up on Money Puck how many combinations Mackie Samoskevich has been a part of. 8 this season, and
that's a lot.
That's a lot. And going back, I wanted to quickly do a quick Google search, a quick search on the stats of another number 11, and I assume you're talking about Jonathan Huberdeau, about how bad it was in season number 2, 28 points in 69 games, and he was a -5. So it's not uncommon. So, and by the way, before we transition, Brad Marchand has yet to play a regular season game with Matthew Tkachuk, and Matthew Tkachuk also has yet to play a regular season game with Seth Jones as well. So crazy fact.
Insane to think about. There's a Stanley Cup in between that, and they have yet to play a regular season game as a unit.
Yeah, Ekblad didn't play a regular season game with Brad Marchand and Seth Jones until opening night this year. So crazy.
Yeah, we will finish this season without ever having seen the Panthers fully healthy in a regular season game with the Stanley Cup roster. Not once. Yeah. It has not happened, and it will not happen this year.
Yeah, this won't be the year for sure. But we're going to transition to segment number 3, where we're going to preview Thursday night's game between the Florida Panthers and the Winnipeg Jets. We'll discuss all that and more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply on the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day, and you see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing into momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boost gives you more juice to bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. You make your picks and apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Segment 3 here on this Wednesday, January 21st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. Armando Velez here once again with Jacob Winans on another edition of Winans Wednesday. And the Panthers play a game on Thursday night in Winnipeg, 8 p.m. puck drop, and it's going to be cold in Manitoba, in the negatives, even negative Celsius for for their game there. But it's funny. I still don't know how to calculate do the conversion between Celsius and Fahrenheit. I just know that 0 is 32 in Fahrenheit and 212 is 100 Celsius. That's all I know there as far as the conversion. But for the Panthers here for this game against Winnipeg, what a fall from grace it's been for Winnipeg. At one point, they were last in the NHL. They were on an 11-game losing streak. Now they climbed back to the third worst record in the NHL. Now the Vancouver Canucks, who are currently on an 11-game losing streak, who are currently actually losing to Washington 2-1 as we speak. And wow, we saw with the injury to Connor Hellebuyck how we saw a little bit of them being exposed with the lack of goal scoring. That's the problem with them. They don't score enough goals. And the problem even with them last year, even though they kind of had a little bit of a miracle in round 1 against the Blues, a lot of people gave them criticized them for their lack of additions at the trade deadline. It was a lot of minor moves, but at the same time, a lot of players have the Jets on their no trade clauses there as well. So it's a little bit of a hard job that Kevin Cheveldayoff has to do. He's been at the helm since 2011. But man, I never has it happened with 30 plus teams in the NHL has a team gone from President's Trophy all the way to last place in the NHL, which as of right now, it's not for the Jets. But man, this has been a season from hell for them. And they haven't had as many of the injuries as Florida has had.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head when you talked about Connor Hellebuyck. It became very, very clear how much of their success he was carrying on his back, and that had definitely been exposed in the playoffs in the past couple of seasons when Hellebuyck has really struggled when it gets to playoff time, and the offense, the defense, the breakdowns are everywhere. They struggle to score. And Hellebuyck's not making saves. They tend to get run out of the building. Now you're seeing some of those ugly spots in their game showing up in the regular season, and it's been killing them. With that said, another good point you made is they have a really hard time attracting free agents. They have a really hard time taking big swings at the trade deadline because oftentimes the best players available have clauses with trade lists or modified no trade clauses or no move clauses. And Winnipeg is just not a destination that a lot of players in those positions want to go to. So they're a team that's really forced to build through the draft. Mm-hmm. And they haven't necessarily hit on as many draft picks as they need to supplement the core that they have there. So it's definitely been quite a fall this year for them. And last year they looked like a team that could make a really, really deep run. They barely survived first round. One of the most exciting games we've ever seen.
One left against St. Louis. Wow.
Yeah, barely made it out alive in that round, and it's kind of been all downhill since. I don't think that's a team that you can take lightly, though, especially given that their issues are with scoring. Panthers right now, their issues are with defense. So it could be a get right game for one of these two teams.
Yeah.
The Panthers have an opportunity to find their defensive game and win one, or the Jets have an opportunity to beat up on an injured defense and finally put some goals in the net. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Though these two teams tend to play each other pretty well. Obviously, Paul Maurice is very familiar with that. A lot of the guys on that side, and we'll see what this game ends up looking like. But overall, I think it's a little bit of a trap game where you can't afford to take them lightly because of where they are in the standings. It's still a team that has a lot of talent. That's a team that can erupt, can explode, can score goals when they find their groove. Don't give them anything that allows them to find their confidence. And that building is also just a notoriously tough one to play in. So got to take them seriously as an opponent. And one other thing you pointed out was the fall from the President's Trophy season. It's been a weird trend with President's Trophy winners past handful of years. There's been some examples. The Rangers, President's Trophy, Eastern Conference Final appearance, and they have completely fallen off since. Winnipeg's doing it, and the Panthers may be a poor example because of what happened in the postseason, but the season after their President's Trophy just lost a lot of talent and had a really, really rough regular season and barely made it into the playoffs. So regular season success has not necessarily always been there for the defending President's Trophy winners.
Yeah, no doubt. And Connor Hellebuyck has started 30 games. He's given up 2 goals or less 13 times. Do you know how many wins he has? In those 13 that he's given up 2 goals or fewer?
I'm going to say 8.
You're close, 7. So that's still
that's not great. You should win 12 of those probably.
Yeah. So that and 4 players are in the 40s when it comes to points, and it's mostly the top line of Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, excuse me, and Alex Iafallo. And then Josh Morrissey is getting in on the scoring as well. But then the next one is not Alex Iafallo, Gabe Velarde, excuse me. Iafallo's on the top line right now. But the 5th person is 20 points behind the next one. And they brought in Jonathan Toews, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, didn't play hockey for a few years due to long COVID. And he's plugged in as your second line center as of right now there. But that's also kind of a little bit of a, it's throwing something at a dartboard for someone who hasn't played hockey for so long there as well. So that's also kind of something that is just like, likely he's going to be trade bait somewhere around the trade deadline as well. And his contract is pretty cheap as well. It's bonus driven there. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. So that's another thing that hasn't truly worked out. And also, the Panthers aren't the only one missing a right-handed shot defenseman in their lineup. Neil Pionk is who can produce points from that second pair. He's out week to week. So just like the Panthers on the back end for that, they're missing a key piece. The Jets are also missing a key piece on their back end as well. So something's got to give tonight.
Yeah, definitely. It's an opportunity. One of these teams is gonna finish this game with a confidence boost against a team that really needs a confidence boost. Mm-hmm. So it's gonna be a tough one for somebody in a game that they think they have a good chance at winning. Panthers tend to do well in these situations, backs against the wall. Kind of got boat raced in the last game. They tend to respond well to big losses. I expect them to bring it. I expect the legs to be there. You mentioned the Jets roster is very top heavy with the scoring. There's a few guys in that team that haven't necessarily produced or taken steps forward that they hoped for. Iafallo is one who they would like more production out of. Cole Perfetti is a guy they thought was going to take a big step. There's spots in that roster where, especially at center, where the Panthers should have the advantage, especially given the fact that the Panthers are at their biggest strength has been center over the years, and they're so depleted there this year. It's rare where you go into a game having a decided advantage down the middle. That should give the Panthers the upper leg and or the upper hand, and the defense. It's kind of Morrissey is fantastic. One of the best defensemen in the league, but it gets real thin after that. So I think the Panthers have a good opportunity here to get 2 points and hopefully beat up on a team that's trying to find their way a little bit.
Yeah, Team Canada dodged a bullet with him not being able to play in the championship game because remember he was sick in that championship game. So dodged a bullet there. And man, speaking of the Jets, I mean, you wonder what would have happened if Kyle Connor would have played in that championship game over Matthew Tkachuk, who was definitely not right in that one. It's just, I know he was playing a bottom role. I know his minutes would have been limited either way for Kyle Connor being on the 4th line, but he's a goal scorer. Multiple 30-goal seasons for him. So it's just a whole what if, but maybe he'll get a little bit of redemption this year in Milano Cortina there for Team USA there. But we will see. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep. You can follow me on X at JakeW_8.
Awesome. And the Panthers will be looking for their first win in Winnipeg since 2022, as they are currently on a 3-game losing streak there. So let's hope that the Panthers can get a dub for the first time since their President's Trophy winning season. So, Jacob, thank you so much, and see you next week, my friend.
Looking forward to it.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.